What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast, your 365-day-a-year favorite Packer podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Andy Herman. You don't care about that. Joining me is the one and only Rachel Hopmayer. She is joining us as she does every Wednesday. Rachel, how the heck are you doing, and what's new with you?
It's cold. If any of you aren't as cold as I am in Green Bay, I'm only wearing one sweatshirt this time, not two, but I do have a blanket and I do have heat on. But
What's the thermostat set at? What's the thermostat at?
Okay. I think the gauge is off because in my right mind, I would never set the thermostat to 72, but it was 70 earlier and my fingers and toes were getting cold walking around. So granted, should I put my slippers on? Maybe, but I bumped it a little bit. Again, it's certainly not 72 in here, but it's not freezing now. I live in an old building. I don't think it's a very accurate gauge.
What's your over under on what our thermostat is set at?
Oh, are you guys like a cool 68?
Are we a cool? Well, it's your guess.
Okay. Over under 70 is the safe option.
We are at 75, and that is all due to
me.
All due to me. So we don't have a ton of air conditioning in the summer. We are warm. Like 3 of the 4 of us are warm, like want it warm. We have our son Xavier, what he likes it colder, but so we are at a firm 75, and that's mostly due to me. I will fully admit that.
Whoa, that is warm. But I mean, I guess you don't have to layer as much. See, I grew up, my mother did not touch that dial. I mean, she would say, suck it up, put on another sweater. So that's why when people commented that I was wearing 2 sweatshirts, I mean, my mom and I were rolling because I would get that comment. But she never touched that dial. And my sister and I would joke like, do we dare bump it up to 1 degree? It had to be something in the mid to low 60s at that rate. But you know what? I have a whole closet full of sweatshirts, and that's what I was raised on.
Yeah, I have a feeling.
And heating blankets, also a godsend. Best thing since sliced bread.
I have a feeling I'm going to get roasted in the comments for 75, but that's okay. I'm used to getting roasted in the comments for a variety of different things. Let's talk some football, though. We did have a smaller transaction, but certainly still an important one with Jordan Love on the COVID IR list. Kurt Benkert, not surprisingly, gets moved up to the active roster as a COVID replacement, will be the acting number 2 quarterback this week, maybe even acting number 1 in practice if Rodgers is unable to practice. And then they add Danny Etling to the practice squad, former New England Patriot draft pick who has spent a ton of time in a variety of different places, including, I believe, the CFL, if memory serves. Yep. He's also spent some time at different positions. He's played some wide receiver even. So he's done a lot of different things. He's an athletic guy, interesting prospect, but probably just more of a, whim, sort of flyer at this point in the season, but an interesting player nonetheless. What were your thoughts on the Benkert and Etling transactions from Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm excited to see, Benkert has the potential to get the most first team reps he's had since May. So this is a really exciting time for him. Again, it's, manifested, whatever you want to say in this, obviously best wishes for Love's health. But at the end of the day, this is Benkert's time to shine, see what the past 12, 13 weeks and more of working in the Packers system has really done for him. So excited to see that this week for sure. Danny Etling, he has been a journeyman for a long time, but especially this year. He was waived from Seattle in August. Spent August with Minnesota, spent September, like you said, with the BC Lions in Canada, then spent 2 weeks of October with Seattle again, then spent a hot second in November in Denver when Drew Lock had COVID, and now we're here. So this has definitely been a whirlwind for him. But I'm interested if Blake Bortles was busy this week, just didn't feel like canceling his golf rounds, what's going on, just because it seemed that relationship really worked out. So I'm just curious what motivating factors would have changed their go-to, in goalie, we have e-bugs, emergency goalies. What would have changed their emergency quarterback signing?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the main thing that changed was the fact that it's Rodgers that's active and that he's good to go, meaning that, they have their guy. If something happens, they know they're screwed basically anyway. Yeah. They'll go with Benkert as the second guy. And then the next guy up is really just we're going to take they know what Bortles is, right? There's no reason to bring Bortles in for a look. Like that would be if there's an emergency and you need a veteran who can at least start in the game and get you through your cadence, get everyone lined up and that sort of thing. I think this is just more of back of the practice squad, number 3 quarterback, somebody that can throw a football if everything would go wrong. And all of a sudden, Saturday hits and something happens and Benkert and Rodgers can't play. At least you've got a guy on the roster. I think this is more just a look to see what he might be able to do.
Sure, totally. And I can see that. And again, at the end of the day, like now we're really getting into the nitty gritty of, I'm sure one option wasn't that much more expensive than the other when you consider what the Packers are already paying some of these guys. But it is interesting that that nuance can really affect who you're bringing in for just a weekend.
Yeah. And like you said, maybe Blake was busy, maybe he had bowling plans. Like you just don't know, right? Like those things are always interesting, but, or maybe Blake's just like, guys, I know you have my speed dial, but I'm not coming in every time somebody gets COVID. Like I'm good. You
Call
guys
me
can
when I matter to you, not just when
Yes.
you want to see me at 3 a.m. He doesn't want a booty call. He wants something meaningful.
That's great. The Blake Bortles booty call. That should be a t-shirt in some capacity.
With Gutekunst on the other end.
Oh yeah, way to start rumors. That's how rumors start, Rachel. Let's talk about something more wholesome, although it doesn't get more wholesome than Blake Bortles booty calls. But Aaron Jones, man of the year. Look at that, just seamless transition from Blake Bortles booty calls to Aaron Jones, man of the year. It's a shame that Blake Bortles got left out of the man of the year conversation for the Packers, but Aaron Jones nominated as the Packers representative for the Walter Payton man of the year. Really cool honor for him. Of course, he posted on social media. I think this means even more to him with, his dad passing away and everything like that. And just a stand-up dude, I try as best as I possibly can not to judge players' character because we just don't know. Right. But like, of all players that I'm willing to, stake my name on a little bit, Aaron Jones seems like that dude. And this certainly seems like a very well-deserved, nomination for him.
Absolutely. In my experiences with Aaron, I went to his youth football camp this summer and covered that at Notre Dame Academy here. Just really passionately invested in the kids. And you go to events where sometimes players aren't that way, but Aaron really seems to care about his efforts. He takes a special heart after, military causes. When we were there, he did something special for kids of active and veteran parents. It's just really awesome to see someone that genuinely loves being invested in his community here and in El Paso, always cares about the kids, always really cares about that type of community connection. It's just awesome to see the league reward those guys for having that type of heart.
Couldn't agree more. And, obviously the work in El Paso and Green Bay, both combined, but also doing work with the Boys and Girls Clubs. So that's a huge part of what he does as well. Just active, involved in the community in a variety of different ways. And certainly, this is not meant to dive into a free agency salary cap, should you pay running back conversation. But Aaron Jones is the epitome of what you hope to get in a player in the locker room. Like, you draft a guy in the 6th round like that, and he turns out to be an absolute stud as a running back, catches the ball out of the backfield well, can pass protect, can do everything that you want on offense, then is also a stand-up guy in the locker room, is a Walter Payton man of the year nominee. Like, yeah, we can have a conversation all day about like, well, maybe they could have spent $3 million on a different position or whatever the case may be. Having a guy like that and paying him what you need to pay him to keep him on this team is better. This community is better. This roster is better because Aaron Jones is on it. And this is just another reason why.
Aaron Jones is everything that a general manager and a coach could ask for. If the two of them had to create a cookie cutter guy, it's Aaron Jones, hands down. Showtime deserves every bit of these accolades.
Plus, he wears a sombrero. How can you want a guy with a sombrero not to be on your team? It's just it
takes a certain level of swag. I'm not going to lie.
It does. Also, as a footnote here as well, speaking of the Walter Payton Man of the Year, also nominated Corey Linsley, which he was the Packers representative last year, nominated again this year, of course, as a member of the Chargers, but certainly deserving. He and Anna Lindsay do a ton of amazing work in their communities as well. And shout out to Anna and Corey for their continued work and obviously getting recognized with the Chargers as well.
Again, just such a man and a family of character, the stuff they do with DACA, plenty of other organizations, they're just so passionately invested. And it's so cool to see athletes with the platform use their resources, platform, name, image, likeness, even just to do such impactful work around them for people that may be in less fortunate or struggling situations.
We are going to run the gamut today on conversation topics because there is no easy way to transition any of these in any way, shape, or form. But I do want to ask you, because you are a wise and intelligent reporter who covers the NFL. And we had a very interesting post-game press conference in Buffalo following Bills Patriots. Jerry Sullivan asked the question of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. He kind of said, the Bills lost to a team that attempted fewer passes than any franchise in more than 40 years. And then specifically asked Poyer and Micah Hyde, was that embarrassing? which Hyde and Poyer could very much tell they took umbrage with, and, were not happy with the question. Sort of kind of gave some answers. I think it was Poyer, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Poyer who said, like, we'll remember that. Maybe it was Hyde. I forget which one it was. But I think it was Hyde maybe it was Hyde said, we'll remember that. And then, eventually they kind of walked off and said, hey, listen, I come up here and we come up here, we answer your questions. We like doing this, but don't do it like that. And it was sort of a whole hullabaloo, if you will. It certainly got a ton of social media attention. I would love your opinion as a smart, wise, educated reporter. What was your thought on the question, the response, and your entire take on the situation?
You're really buttering me up here. It's interesting because I think a lens that many who maybe aren't in my or yours or reporter situations could consider, we've seen this on the Packers beat before. There was a question asked about MVS last year that wasn't the most positive or fair, I guess I think is the right word, is fair or empathetic. Yeah, empathetic, professional, fair, whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of fans will remember that. And the amount of coaches and players and other reporters that took to his defense in that line of questioning. But I think all of this first can be put into context of, we work very public jobs where almost everything we do is on camera and everybody makes mistakes, but a lot of our mistakes are broadcast live on television. This is not me defending that man. I personally don't ask questions like that. I personally make a conscious effort to never put words in players' mouths. I much prefer to ask open-ended questions of, maybe here's the stat. What's your reaction to that? How does that make you feel? What are you taking away from this game? Instead of, is that embarrassing? I just don't like in my line of questioning, what I like to get out of stories, to be so targeted with that, because I really prefer the players to drive their answers instead of me driving them in a direction. So that's personally my ethical drive. At the end of the day, everybody makes mistakes. I think, as you and I have personally discussed, the greater issue is when this reporter doubles down and, as the players are walking out, uses the line, in my day, players would have answered that question. And I think there are many issues with that. And if I have to be the one to say, okay, boomer, I just did. But the point is, there are so many things that have changed since your subjective in my day issue. Players have changed, media rules have changed, empathy and mental health subjects, and so many other collective cultural issues, topics, conversations have been spurned in sports media in general, that the world is different. Covering the NFL or any professional sport today is not the same as it was in the early aughts, in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 70s, whatever back in your day was. And I just think at the end of the day, you're just proving that you're stuck in ways. And I'm not saying it's not a reporter's job to ask the hard questions, because it is. As we've seen on the Packers beat this year, we've had to ask a lot of hard questions. And sometimes you have to fact check players on their own stuff. But at the end of the day, there's a way to still have empathy and respect. And Poyer and Hyde felt disrespected, and I don't blame them for that at all. Especially when in the COVID protocols, we see a lot of times post game this year, it's not like we're in the locker room where you can go seek out the type of players of the game for yourself. A lot of times after games, you're lucky if a team puts up the so-called player of the game. It's really team leaders that are taking the most heat and having to take the podium the most. We always get Devontae, we always get Rodgers or the quarterback of the game. And the PR gets to really choose that these days. You don't always get to go to the guy who you think should be answering this type of question. That may have been suited better for someone else, but at the end of the day, I understand why the players were frustrated with it. And I think it's a mistake if the reporter wants to consider it a mistake. But to me, the more significant issue is doubling down and making this a sort of fight or a conflict when it didn't have to be. You could have said, when they took offense to it, okay, how do you feel? Is that not the right word to use? There's a way to stay conversational and show respect as a human. At the end of the day, they're doing their jobs as athletes. We're doing our jobs as media. But again, when you created a hostile environment, it's really not fair to the guys who have to sit up there and take questions every day.
Could not agree with you more. And I think, the first thing, and we kind of discussed this offline as well, is I think, any backlash towards Hyde and Poyer for how they responded, I think is completely unfounded. I thought they did,
exactly.
They were taken aback by the question. I think understandably so, still tried to answer it as best they could and just said, they enjoy doing it each day. They just sort of expected a better line of questioning. And I think that's a fair thing to consider. You also hit the nail on the head by saying, in my day, right? If you're going to start anything, especially in today's age with in my day or back in my day, it's passed you by. It's
Yeah.
not back in your day.
Yeah.
It is in their day. It is in Micah Hyde's and Jordan Poyer's day. This is 2021.
Mhm.
And you have to evolve. And at some point, I will have to evolve towards a younger generation. Thankfully, I'm still in my early 20s and not aging at all.
Right.
So that's lucky on my end. But at some point, I'm going to have to do that, and you're going to have to do that. It just, you have to stay up with the game. The game doesn't have to stay up with you. And I think that anytime that you're going to go with that line of reasoning, yeah, you know what? Nitschke might have handled that question a lot differently than, Aaron Jones might. You have to know your audience. And if you want a good response as a reporter, like, you also have to know your audience and how you think that they're going to respond, unless that's the response that you were hoping for, in which case you're just trying to push buttons and get some sort of flare up so that you have a story, which is also awful. Now, I will say this, and I'm happy you brought up, it's very public, and it's very, we all have asked bad questions. I had an experience I asked an awful question of Matt LaFleur last year. Now, it wasn't of anything derogatory towards a player. I just worded,
because I'm like, I don't remember what you're talking about.
Worded a question horribly. So it was before the Rams game in the playoffs. And I wanted it because it was the Packers' #1 offense versus the Rams' #1 defense. And I tried, and I don't even want to go back and listen to it. It went semi-viral because it was asked so poorly. But I was trying to ask of, like, how do you as an offensive coordinator try to reconcile the fact of you're going against the #1 defense, you're the #1 offense. Do you want to sort of dictate to them and do what you do best? Or do you want to try to change up to not go into their strength as the #1 defense? And that was the precipice for my question, but I could not have butchered it anymore if I tried. And it came out like basically me, asking what he was going to do against the Rams. And he responded in kind by saying, "What do you want the game plan?" Which, by the way,
I've even gotten that answer from LaFleur too.
You have, and other people have as well. So I was the first one, I believe, to get the "Do you want the game plan?" So I think I was the first one to get that response from him. But he has used exactly. So he has used it since, which makes me feel slightly better.
Oh, yes, I promise. He used it literally on me.
Yeah, so great. I did not know that, but either way, but the point of that whole thing is to say, like, it's easy to ask a dumb question in the moment because you got your words jumbled, or you were thinking one thing and it just kind of came out another. That's what happened to me. And the big thing for me is I immediately owned it. Like, I immediately, with LaFleur, I kind of just rephrased the question a little bit. But right after, I think I was on social media 5 minutes later and said something to the effect of, I completely butchered that question and I need to be better at asking questions. Like, it's not difficult to own something in that situation. Again, mine was not attacking a player or a coach or anything. It was just a poorly worded question. But I in that situation, if he comes back after, and to your point about doubling down on it, if he says something to the effect of, yeah, you know what, I wish I would have asked that differently, or changes the question for them or something. But instead, it's been a full day on Twitter of him doubling down on the question and going on and on about it, when just say, you know what, I think I probably could have asked that differently. And it's a non-story after that.
Easily. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, again, it's a very public job, for many people watching this. I'm sure any daily mistake you make at your job is not exposed to the world live on very viral platforms. And you can, not so publicly own your mistakes, but also, like, this is the job we're paid to do. There's two sides of this coin for sure. Yeah. I asked LaFleur when Stokes was coming back from injury, how often he was going to be rotated into the secondary game plan. And he said, "What do you want me to give you the game plan?" And I said, "Yes, actually." So that's what you do. And you laugh it off, and everybody laughs. He laughs, I laugh, and it's fine, because again, it's a colloquial thing at that point. But I think, as we've said, there were multiple issues with how the situation unfolded, specifically the antagonizing of it from the reporter's perspective. And I think it can show people, the tensions that lead from both jobs. But again, like I said, it's not like we have the locker room to have these more casual interactions like we always do. I've also seen it where a reporter will make a mistake, find the guy in the locker room after the next practice and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I should have worded that differently," or, "Hey, no hard feelings," something like that. But again, we don't have those opportunities unless you're connected in other ways. Again, that's reporting, that's networking, but we don't have that in-person access anymore. You're not going to shout that across the practice field, completely unprofessional for everybody. Like, so it is different. I've seen plenty when I was back in Washington, at FedEx or, in Landover or Ashburn, you had that daily interaction. You were able to continue your relationships with players beyond the podium. And just with COVID and even post COVID, I mean, it's not really changing. Access is different. So there's a lot more pressure on these few questions we do get.
There certainly is. And I certainly respect that. And that's why I said, again, a mistake's easy to make. I don't blame anyone for that. I just wish the ownership of it afterward would have been a little bit different. Let's transition to something fun. Not quite as fun as a Blake Bortles booty call.
That's like your fifth smooth transition of the night.
The fifth awkward transition of the night. But I wanted to ask you this because I think it's an interesting question. We're all hoping from a Packer fan standpoint, those on this side of the wall, not the purest reporter side of the wall, but hoping that the Packers can go on and ultimately win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. The question I have for you is, which player or person within the organization do you think their legacy can benefit the most from potentially winning a Super Bowl this year? Hold on. Before you answer, because I have a feeling that I think there's four. I think there's four key.
Okay, let's put the pawns out there.
All right, I'll put the four pawns out. I think there's two honorable mentions, which I'll get to in a second, but I think there's four legitimate people in the organization that would have a massive benefit from winning a Super Bowl. Okay. First is, of course, Aaron Rodgers. I think that one's the clear to see. Him getting his second Super Bowl. Quarterbacks are always judged on Super Bowls. It's just the nature of the position. So him getting that second one would be massive, and going out, especially after this entire season, would be huge for him. Yep. Davante Adams, I think, is the second one.
Yep.
I do think for him, I think he's already on his way. I think it's a really interesting discussion of like, if his career ended today, would he be a Hall of Famer? I think it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
But you give him a really strong Super Bowl game where they win the Super Bowl, and it's like gold jackets almost like zipped up and on him, right?
Right. That is still the deal. Best wideout.
Exactly. Best wideout, 99 overall in Madden award, a couple of years running, like massive stats. Now you're getting a Super Bowl and in a massive Super Bowl victory. Like that could be absolutely huge for him. Matt LaFleur, I think you have you come into a team that had been struggling for a couple seasons, go NFC championship, Super Bowl win with likely a 3-loss regular season, and then probably somewhere this year between 3 and 4, maybe 5 losses at most, and would go on to a Super Bowl win. Like, he's set forever, like street name after him. Like, he's going to be a coach for, and maybe not with the Pack, but like he'll have a coaching job for like 30 more years. Like, he is set at that point. And I think just, again, for his legacy, if you're a coach, you want at least that one Super Bowl win. To get that in year 3 would be insane. And arguably the best first 3 years of any coach in NFL history, if he does that. So I think it does him a lot. And then Brian Gutekunst, I think anytime as a GM, you can get that Super Bowl in your name. Again, you're going up in Lambeau, the different moves that he's had to make, and the off season that he's had to navigate and things like that. I think it does a ton for him too. My 2 honorable mentions, Rasul Douglas, and I'll only say this with a caveat. He would have to have like a Super Bowl MVP or something. But
right. You better have like hurled in 3 touchdowns or interceptions, and made some real plays. But
there's always that cult hero, right? Like Andre Rison from the last Super Bowl, or even like a Desmond Howard from the 96 Super Bowl. Like, those two will be cult heroes forever. Like Howard Green for forcing the interception that Nick Collins picks off. Right. Like, he didn't do much else that season or that game, but like Howard Green will be a fixture in Packer fans' heads forever. If Rasul Douglas comes in this season off of a practice squad, helps lead this defense to a Super Bowl, and comes up with like a pick or a pick 6 in the Super Bowl.
I was about to say, a Super Bowl pick 6, you could literally name it Rasul Douglas Stadium.
You could. So like that would be, and then the last one I'll say, and it's sort of an interesting one, but Ted Thompson. So I think people forget that Davante Adams, David Bakhtiari, Kenny Clark, Randall Cobb, he left and came back. So I'm not sure if we can give him credit.
I don't count the second sit under Ted. That's not fair.
All right, fair enough. But he wouldn't be here if Rodgers didn't fall in love with him.
Agree. Origin story, not rebirth.
All right, fair enough. Mason Crosby, Aaron Jones, Kevin King, Dean Lowry, Lucas Patrick, and by the way, Aaron Rodgers. Like, there is a huge chunk of this core Packer team that is in large part due to Ted Thompson still. Like that a part of this Super Bowl would go on his name as well. So I guess those are the 6. I think Douglas is a little bit cheating, but I think overall those are the names that would have to be considered.
Yeah, and I certainly agree. When you had texted me this prompt earlier, I was like, oh God, I got to spend some time thinking about this one. And you listed literally every bullet point I had in my mind. I totally see cases for everybody here. Maybe if I can condense it, I think I'd equate the Gutekunst and Thompson one, just because, again, that's just the pre and the current management. And at this point, Gutekunst has kept in place as much as he could what Thompson built for him. So again, if Gutekunst is to benefit, Thompson is to also as well.
Agreed.
So I think those go hand in hand. To me, again, I see all these cases clear as day. I think everybody stands to significantly benefit from a ring on their finger this February, or even reaching the Super Bowl and getting past the championship at this level as well. But I think, to me right now, with the fact that Rodgers is above all of them, closer to the end of his career than the rest, especially LaFleur's coaching, I just see that as the biggest impact of them all. And maybe only in a slight way. Again, Devontae Adams is gunning and is the best wideout in the league. And you're talking about in a contract year where if Rodgers leaves, maybe Adams might not stay here. He has many more years to go at hopefully a similarly high level of talent. This sets him up for a new start with a new banging contract anywhere. But again, just reinforcing that resume of his, also significantly impactful. Matt LaFleur, again, continues to knock at Coach of the Year. This would be, I mean, one of the, again, like you said, greatest coaching start of all time, possibly. So Rasul Douglas, yeah, I'd love to see the guy break out. It's just, again, you're always rooting for the great story. People say, like you said, fans want the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. Let's be clear. I would like to go to LA in February. Let's just put it out there. If we've seen what Green Bay's been like for the past week, I would like to be somewhere sunny in February without having to take PTO to do it. But it's also, I'm rooting for the story. I am always rooting for the story. And Rasul Douglas has had one hell of a story. You can beep that out if you want. I don't remember how sweary we get on here.
You're good with hell.
Okay, good. So, but to me, just the one that's got the edge is Rodgers because of the career trajectory he has right now. And in the sense that he's so much closer to cementing a legacy than the others are right now. You're getting close to that final stamp.
I like it. And I think the majority of people would agree with you. And I think you're probably even right. The only reason that I would maybe argue against Rodgers is because I think he's already clearly a Hall of Famer. Yep. He's already won a Super Bowl. Like, his legacy for the most part is untouchable. And like, Tom Brady has set a standard so insane and ridiculous that, like, if you're not at like 6 or 7 or whatever the heck Brady is at, like, does 2 even get you in like the conversation of like any of it? Like, I just don't know how much going from 1 to 2, when you go like 30 years forward and look back at Aaron Rodgers' overall career arc and resume, are you saying like there was a tangible difference between Rodgers because he won 1 Super Bowl or 2? Maybe. I just don't think it's like that huge. I think his resume and everything is going to speak for itself. If he didn't have 1 yet, I think this would be like an insane thing for him, and everyone would be talking about it. I think going from 1 to 2 may not have quite the oomph that it once had, other than maybe the fact that like Favre only got 1 and him getting 2 would be a differentiator between the 2 of them.
I also have to consider the drama, the offseason drama that brought him here. When people look back of, oh God, remember summer of 2021, he almost didn't come back. They kept the band together, the Michael Jordan memes, the blah, blah, blah. Like, I do think that could be a little bit of conversation just because he was so close to pondering that retirement potentially or elsewhere. But yes, yeah.
And you're right. Imagine if they called The Last Dance ahead of time and then Adams and Rodgers go out and win a Super Bowl. That will be an all-timer. That will be told in stories for forever. So yeah, again, I'm more leaning towards you're right, but I'm gonna say Brian Gutekunst. And the reason I say that is because I think he has the most to gain. And what I mean by that is, as a GM, you get more often than not, same as a head coach, but as a GM, you get hired to get fired. Like 31 of the 32 GMs at some point are probably going to get hired unless you've done, unless you put together a franchise that just goes on like a 20-year run of greatness or something. You're ultimately probably going to find yourself on the outs at some point. But you win a Super Bowl and it just buys you so much time, so much longevity. And it gives you a much greater leash. And again, it puts you probably right there with Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson in the Ring of Fame. It gets you so much credibility and everything. And I just think that of everyone on that list, where, if they don't win a Super Bowl and things go wrong with Jordan Love, he's 2-3 years away from maybe being very much on the hot seat. With a win, like, he's golden for a decade, probably, if not more. So I think he has the most to gain, both, just in job security, status around the league, all of it. I think he has the most to gain by a potential Super Bowl win.
Sure. I think also it's funny when revisiting some of the stuff you were saying about Rodgers. I think you can divide sports fans, sports journalists, sports conversationalists is my umbrella for this, into 2 categories: people that use Super Bowls as a stat against great quarterbacks and great talent, and those who don't, because so many factors get into a team reaching the Super Bowl. It can't just be on the quarterback. And, again, I was thinking about this earlier, Tom Brady again took a significant pay cut for most of my childhood in New England in order for the team to make the Super Bowl. And that is an actionable thing that the quarterback did to pay for and assure talent on all sides of the ball. Now, Rodgers has not done that, and he vocally did not do that. He wanted to be paid what he was worth. But that does impact things, that impacts the talent and the money that's spread around the team and your salary cap restrictions there. So I do think it's interesting that people like to use that against quarterbacks in different ways, where we've seen two great quarterbacks, again, with equitably amazing levels of talent, treat reaching Super Bowl potentials very differently.
No, I think that's fair. And yeah, I think, anytime you bring that, like Dan Marino, I don't think deserves any flack for not winning a Super Bowl, right? Like, I don't think that's not on him. He was fantastic. He did everything he could, and he just didn't have the supporting cast around him. And that's not on Marino. So some of those times that stuff just happens. And I don't think Dan Marino should be looked at any less because he didn't win a Super Bowl. It's just, it wasn't on him. Like, you had a phenomenal quarterback.
That's on the general managers.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So no, it's always fun to have these conversations. As you mentioned, when you win a Super Bowl, it affects everyone. Teams try to poach everyone they can from that Super Bowl team because everyone gets valued a little bit higher. They're coming from a winning organization and a culture. So anyone that's an unrestricted free agent, your Devondre Campbell's, your Azul Douglas's, your Devontae Adams, everyone else that is free agent coming up.
You just got a big fat gold star on your resume. Devondre Campbell's not going for $2 million a year anymore after that.
He will not be. He's not already, but it's going to, go up appreciatively even after that. So no, these are always fun conversations. Great stuff as always. We really kind of hit on absolutely everything. Where can we find you? Where can we find your work? What do you want to tell us? Anything else exciting going on? The floor is yours.
I'm always at Rachel Hopmayer. I'm always in the comments of Andy's YouTube channels. I'm excited for Sunday Night Football. It's on NBC. That's always extra fun for me, considering I work for the NBC station here, NBC 26. So that's always fun because we get to do an extra long pregame show before the national ones. So if you're local, even if you're not, you can watch live on NBC26.com. But Sunday Night Football games are always a little more exciting for me. I've worked on that production for a little less than half my life at this point, and it's just a little more special.
What's your end time on a Sunday Night Football game? Like, what time do you get home and get to bed?
Oh God. I believe last time was 1. So we shall see. No, it's not horrible because at the end of the day, the way it logistically works, if anybody wants to nerd out over this, is, we typically have a 10 o'clock show that doesn't realistically air until after Sunday Night Football. And again, the folks in the studio, Dungy, everybody, you name it, they'll only go so long depending on when the break times are. So it all depends on what corporate says. But at the end of the day, it'll be super fun either way. Definitely going to bundle up. I didn't see any inclement weather for Sunday, but still cold regardless around here. It's the frozen tundra at this point.
Yeah, walking that little corridor on the outside, you know exactly what I mean. That's no.
I know. I got to start wearing my jacket for that now. I've been ditching the jacket.
No, don't ditch the jacket. Sunday night games are about 3 a.m. mornings for me because I get back from the game, write my article for Packer Report, try to do the quick 35-minute rewatch of the game, come here, record the YouTube, upload this podcast, upload the audio podcast, get everything done, go to bed at 3 a.m, wake up the next morning for 8 a.m. because I have an 8 a.m. call on Monday morning. So
no, my goal is home at 1, in bed at 1:30. That's my goal. I guess we could set that. We'll follow up next week to see what hit.
We will. We'll see who had the latest, longest, worst night after it, but hopefully it's a win, and that makes the 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. nights that much easier. Rachel's phenomenal stuff as always. Everyone make sure to go follow Rachel on Twitter. We will be back here together next week breaking down Packers Bears and heading into the following week, Ravens after that. But again, make sure to follow Rachel's work. Make sure to subscribe here if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.